My wife told me she didn't want a prenup because she loved me for who I was, but when I came home early one day, I overheard her on the phone laughing about how naive I was. She was planning to divorce me in 6 months and take half of my $10 million fortune, but she had no idea I was recording every word. What I discovered next revealed she wasn't just a gold digger. She was a professional con artist who had done this twice before. My name is Richard, and I want to tell you how I discovered that my beautiful fiancée was nothing more than a sophisticated gold digger, and how I turned her own game against her in the most satisfying way imaginable. It started 2 years ago. When I met Vanessa at an upscale charity gala in Manhattan, I was 38, a successful investment banker who had just made partner at one of Wall Street's most prestigious firms. After focusing on my career for 15 years, I was finally ready to settle down and start a family. Vanessa was absolutely stunning, 28 years old, with long auburn hair, emerald green eyes, and the kind of elegance that turned heads wherever she went. She introduced herself as an art consultant who worked with wealthy collectors, and everything about her seemed perfect. She was sophisticated, charming, and appeared to share my interests in fine dining, travel, and the arts. Our courtship was like something out of a fairy tale. Vanessa was attentive, loving, and seemed genuinely interested in building a life together. She never asked for money directly, but she had expensive tastes that I was happy to indulge. Designer clothes, jewelry, 5-star restaurants I enjoyed. Spoiling her because I thought I had found my soulmate. After 18 months of dating, I proposed to her during a weekend trip to Paris. She said yes, with tears in her eyes, and I felt like the luckiest man alive. "I can't wait to be your wife," she whispered, as we held each other on the balcony of our suite overlooking the Eiffel Tower. "I want to give you everything, a beautiful home, children, a perfect life together." We set the wedding date for 6 months later and began planning what would be a lavish ceremony at the Plaza Hotel. Vanessa threw herself into the preparations with enthusiasm, though I noticed she had expensive tastes for every detail. The dress alone cost $15,000, but I didn't mind. I wanted our wedding to be perfect. It was during the wedding planning that my attorney, L. Martin Goldberg, brought up the subject of a prenuptial agreement. Richard, you're worth over $8 million now, and that's only going to grow," Martin said during a lunch meeting. "I strongly recommend a prenup, especially given the short duration of your relationship." I was resistant to the idea. "Martin, I love Vanessa. I don't want to start our marriage by implying I don't trust her. It's not about trust. It's about protection. You've worked 15 years to build this wealth. A prenup protects both of you. What would happen if we divorced without one? In New York, she'd be entitled to half of everything acquired during the marriage, plus substantial alimony, given the lifestyle you've established with her." I thought about it for several days before finally deciding to have the conversation with Vanessa. I expected her to be hurt or offended, but I was committed to handling it sensitively. "Sweetheart," I said one evening as we sat in my penthouse apartment, "I need to discuss something with you. My attorney has suggested we consider a prenuptial agreement." Vanessa's reaction was immediate and explosive. "A prenup," she said, her voice rising. "Richard, how can you even suggest such a thing? Don't you trust me?" "Of course I trust you. This isn't about trust. It's about protecting both of us." "Protecting you, you mean," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're basically telling me you think I'm a gold digger?" "It's not what I'm saying at all. Vanessa, please try to understand." "No, Richard, you try to understand. I'm not some fortune hunter looking to take advantage of you. I love you for who you are, not what you have. The fact that you would even consider this shows you don't really know me at all." She stormed out of the apartment, and for the next 3 days, she wouldn't take my calls. When she finally agreed to see me, she was cold and distant. "I've been thinking about our relationship," she said, sitting stiffly on my couch. "If you can't trust me enough to marry me without a prenup, then maybe we're not right for each other." Felt terrible. Here was the woman I loved, hurt and disappointed because I had listened to my lawyer's advice. "Vanessa, I'm sorry, you're right. A prenup would be a terrible way to start our marriage. I don't want one." Her demeanor changed instantly. She threw her arms around me, crying tears of relief. "Oh, Richard, I'm so glad you understand. I love you so much, and I would never do anything to hurt you." We're going to have such a beautiful life together. I called Martin the next day and told him to forget about the prenup. Richard, I strongly advise against this decision, he warned. My mind is made up, Martin. I trust Vanessa completely. I hope you're right, he said, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The wedding was magnificent. 300 guests, an orchestra, flowers flown in from Holland, and a reception that cost more than most people's houses. Vanessa looked like an angel in her designer gown, and I felt like I was living in a dream. During our honeymoon in the Maldives, Vanessa was the perfect wife, attentive, loving, and constantly talking about our future together. I can't wait to start trying for children, she said as we walked on the beach. I want to give you at least 3 babies. I can't wait to be a father, I replied, pulling her close. For the first few months of our marriage, everything seemed perfect. We settled into married life in my penthouse, and Vanessa appeared to be blissfully happy. She redecorated the apartment with expensive furnishings, joined exclusive clubs, and quickly became part of Manhattan's social scene. But gradually, I began to notice changes in her behavior. The first red flag was her attitude toward starting a family. Despite her enthusiastic talk during our honeymoon, Vanessa always seemed to have an excuse for why it wasn't the right time to have children. I want to enjoy being newlyweds for a while, she said, when I brought it up after 6 months of marriage. There's no rush, darling. When I mentioned it again a few months later, she had a different excuse. I'm thinking of starting my own art consulting business. Maybe we should wait until I get that established. The second red flag was her spending. Vanessa had always enjoyed expensive things, but as my wife, her consumption reached astronomical levels. She was buying designer clothes almost daily, getting weekly spa treatments that cost thousands, and constantly redecorating our home with items. It cost more than most people's monthly salaries. When I gently suggested that maybe she should slow down her spending, her reaction was swift and manipulative. Richard, are you seriously trying to control my spending? I'm your wife, not your employee. I gave up my career to be with you, and now you want to micromanage how I spend money? I'm not trying to control you, Vanessa. I just think we should. Have a budget? A budget? She laughed coldly. You're worth millions of dollars and you want to put your wife on a budget? What will people think? She had a way of making me feel guilty for even bringing up financial responsibility. I usually ended up apologizing and telling her to spend whatever she wanted. The third red flag was her attitude toward my work. Initially, Vanessa had seemed interested and supportive of my career. But after we got married, she began complaining constantly about the hours I worked. You care more about your job than you do about me, she would say when I had to work late. What's the point of being married if I never see my husband? When I explained that my work was what provided our lifestyle, she would become even more upset. I didn't marry you for money, Richard. I married you because I love you. But clearly, you don't feel the same way. These arguments became more frequent and more intense. Vanessa had a talent for making me feel like a terrible husband whenever I tried to maintain professional obligations. The final red flag was her relationship with her friends. Vanessa had introduced me to her social circle, other young, beautiful women who seemed to be married to or dating much older, wealthy men. When they got together, I noticed they spent most of their time comparing their husband's wealth, discussing expensive purchases and complaining about prenups and financial restrictions. Jessica's husband bought her a new Mercedes for her birthday, Vanessa mentioned one evening. The AMG model? Fully loaded. That's nice, I replied, focused on reading the financial news. It's really nice, she continued. I was thinking maybe it's time I got a new car too. The BMW is almost 2 years old. Her BMW was a top-of-the-line model that had cost $80,000, but apparently that wasn't enough anymore. Despite these growing concerns, I tried to make our marriage work. I loved Vanessa, or at least I loved the woman I thought she was. I convinced myself that the issues we were having were normal adjustments to married life. But everything changed on a Tuesday evening in November. Exactly 14 months after our wedding, I had been working late on a major deal and decided to come home early to surprise Vanessa with dinner from her favorite restaurant. As I entered our penthouse, I heard her voice coming from the living room. She was on the phone, and something about her tone made me stop and listen. No, trust me. It's going exactly according to plan, she was saying. Richard is so naive. It's almost too easy. I froze, my heart beginning to pound. Of course I don't love him, she continued with a laugh. Have you seen him? He's boring, he works all the time, and he has no idea how to please a woman, but he's worth over 10 million. Now, so I can put up with him for a few more years? I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The key is to avoid getting pregnant at all costs, Vanessa went on. Once I have his baby, I'm tied to him forever. But if I can hold him off for another couple of years while he builds more wealth, then I can divorce him and take half of everything plus massive alimony. My legs felt weak. I leaned against the wall, struggling to process what I was hearing. Jessica says I should start creating evidence of emotional abuse or something. Make it look like he's a terrible husband. That way I can get even more in the settlement. No, he's too boring to cheat. What? Richard wouldn't know how to have an affair if his life depended on it. Trust me, by the time I'm 35, I'll be set for life and can find someone I actually want to be with. I quietly backed out of the apartment, my mind reeling. The woman I had married, the woman I thought loved me, had been playing an elaborate con game from the very beginning. I drove around Manhattan for hours trying to decide what to do. My first instinct was to confront her immediately, but then I remembered something Martin had told me about prenups. Once you know someone's true character, you can protect yourself, but you have to be smart about it. Instead of confronting Vanessa that night, I began my own careful investigation. I hired a private investigator named Carol Stevens, former FBI agent who specialized in matrimonial cases. Within 2 weeks, Carol had uncovered Vanessa's entire history. Your wife is a professional, Carol told me during a meeting at her office. This isn't her first marriage. She slid a file across the desk. Inside were documents showing that Vanessa had been married twice before, both times to wealthy, older men. Her first marriage, when she was 22, was to a 55-year-old real estate developer. That marriage lasted 3 years and ended with Vanessa receiving a settlement worth $2.3 million. Her second marriage was to a 48-year-old tech entrepreneur. That marriage lasted for years, and Vanessa walked away with $3.8 million. She's perfected the system, Carol explained. She targets successful, lonely men who are ready to settle down. She plays the perfect girlfriend for 18 to 24 months, gets married without a prenup, then gradually builds a case for divorce while maximizing the settlement. What about her art consulting business? I asked. Completely fake. She's never had a real job. Her entire income has come from divorce settlements and the allowances her husbands give her. Carol had also discovered that Vanessa had been secretly taking birth control throughout our marriage while pretending we were trying to have children. She had even been visiting a fertility doctor and reporting fake results to me about why we weren't conceiving. She's been playing you perfectly, Carol said. The spending, the complaints about your work hours, the emotional manipulation. It's all designed to build a case that you're an inattentive, controlling husband. But the most damaging evidence was financial. Carol had traced Vanessa's spending and discovered that she had been systematically funneling money out of our joint accounts into hidden investments and offshore accounts. She's been preparing for her exit strategy since the day you got married, Carol explained. She's already stolen over $400,000 from your joint accounts by inflating expenses and skimming cash. I felt sick. The woman I had trusted with my heart and my fortune had been systematically robbing me while planning to destroy me in divorce court. But Carol had more information that would prove crucial. I've been monitoring her communications, Carol said. She's been working with a divorce attorney named Harold Steinberg, who specializes in maximizing settlements for women in high-net-worth divorces. They've been planning her exit strategy for months. Carol showed me intercepted emails between Vanessa and her attorney discussing strategies for maximizing her settlement, including creating false evidence of emotional abuse and isolation. She's planning to file for divorce in about 6 months, Carol continued. Her strategy is to claim that you've become increasingly controlling and emotionally abusive, that you've isolated her from friends and family, and that she's afraid for her safety. Reading those emails, I realized that many of our recent arguments had been carefully orchestrated by Vanessa to create a pattern she could point to as evidence of my abuse. What can I do? I asked Carol. We can expose her fraud and build a counter case, but it won't be easy. She's experienced at this game. That night, I sat in my office planning my strategy. Vanessa thought she was playing chess while I played checkers, but she was about to discover that I was better at her game than she was. Instead of confronting Vanessa or filing for divorce myself, I decided to let her proceed with her plan while I built an airtight case against her. Over the next 4 months, I carefully documented every lie, every manipulation, and every instance of financial fraud. I also began recording our conversations. With Carol's guidance on legal methods, the most damaging evidence came from Vanessa's own words. I installed recording equipment in our home and captured dozens of phone conversations where she discussed her strategy with friends and her attorney in one particularly damning conversation. I recorded Vanessa talking to her friend Jessica about creating false evidence. I'm going to start taking pictures of myself looking upset after our arguments, Vanessa said. Harold says emotional distress is worth an extra $1 million in the settlement. Brilliant, Jessica replied. I wish I had thought of that with my second husband. The key is making Richard look like a monster without doing anything that could backfire legally, Vanessa continued. Men like him are so easy to manipulate, because they actually have consciences. I also discovered that Vanessa had been meeting regularly with Harold Steinberg, often at expensive restaurants that I was unknowingly paying for through her credit card expenses. But my masterstroke came when I learned about Vanessa's secret bank accounts through Carol's investigation. We discovered that Vanessa had been working with a financial advisor named Craig Morrison to hide assets in preparation for divorce. She had been moving money into investments under her maiden name and even had property in the Cayman Islands that I knew nothing about. This is wire fraud and money laundering, Carol explained. She's committed multiple felonies. With all this evidence compiled, I was ready for Vanessa's move. It came on a Thursday evening in March, exactly 2 years after our wedding. I came home to find Vanessa sitting in our living room with suitcases packed, tears streaming down her face. Richard, I can't do this anymore, she said, her voice shaking with what appeared to be genuine emotion. This marriage isn't working. What do you mean? I asked, playing my role perfectly. You've become so controlling and cold. You care more about money than you do about me. I feel like I'm living with a stranger. Vanessa, where's this coming from? We can work through whatever problems we're having. No, we can't, she said, standing up dramatically. I've tried to make this marriage work, but you've made it impossible. I'm filing for divorce. She handed me a manila envelope containing divorce papers. As I read through them, I saw that she was asking for half of all marital assets, $50,000 per month in alimony, and exclusive use of the penthouse during the proceedings. Vanessa, this seems extreme. Can't we try counseling first? It's too late. For counseling, Richard. You've emotionally abused me for too long. My attorney says I have grounds for a significant settlement based on your conduct. I pretended to be shocked and devastated, emotionally abused you. Vanessa, I love you. I've given you everything you've ever wanted. Money isn't love, Richard. You've isolated me from my friends, controlled my spending, and made me feel like a prisoner in my own home. It was a masterful performance, and if I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her myself. I need some time to process this, I said. Can we talk more tomorrow? There's nothing more to talk about. I'll be staying at the plaza until the divorce is finalized. My attorney will be in touch with yours. After Vanessa left, I called Martin Goldberg. She filed for divorce, I told him. I'm sorry, Richard. I know this must be devastating. Actually, Martin, I've been expecting this. And I have something that's going to change everything. The next morning, I met with Martin and presented him with Carol's entire investigation file. As he read through the evidence, his expression changed from sympathy to amazement to something approaching glee. Richard, this is incredible. She's committed multiple felonies. We don't just have grounds to fight the divorce. We have grounds to have her arrested. I want to do more than that, I said. I want to destroy her entire operation. Martin and I crafted a response that would not only defeat Vanessa's divorce claims, but expose her as the fraud she was when we appeared in court for the initial divorce proceedings. Vanessa's attorney, Harold Steinberg, was confident and aggressive. Your Honor, Steinberg said my client has been subjected to emotional abuse and financial control by her husband. She's entitled to substantial compensation for the trauma she's endured. Vanessa sat next to him looking like the perfect victim. Elegant, composed, but with just a hint of vulnerability. When it was Martin's turn to speak, he stood up with a thick folder of documents. Your Honor, before we discuss any settlement, I believe the court should be aware of evidence showing that the plaintiff has committed fraud, theft, and perjury. Steinberg jumped up. Objection. And this is clearly a desperate attempt to, Mr. Steinberg, the judge interrupted. I'll allow Mr. Goldberg to present his evidence. Martin began methodically presenting Carol's investigation. First, he showed evidence of Vanessa's 2 previous marriages and the pattern of fraudulent divorce settlements. The plaintiff is not the young, inexperienced woman she claims to be. Your Honor, she's a professional con artist who has defrauded multiple men out of millions of dollars. Vanessa's face went pale. She maintained her composure. Then Martin presented the financial evidence showing how Vanessa had been stealing money from our joint accounts and hiding assets. The plaintiff has systematically embezzled over $400,000 from marital accounts while secretly accumulating assets in preparation for divorce. Finally, Martin played the recorded conversations where Vanessa discussed her strategy with friends and her attorney. As her own voice filled the courtroom, discussing how naive and easy to manipulate I was, Vanessa's composure finally cracked. She looked like she was going to be sick. Your Honor, Martin continued. The plaintiff's claims of emotional abuse are not only false, but were deliberately fabricated as part of an elaborate fraud scheme. The judge looked disgusted. Mr. Steinberg, how do you respond to this evidence? Steinberg looked like he wanted to disappear. Your Honor, I was not aware of this information when I agreed to represent Mrs. Matthews. Should think not. The judge replied coldly. Mr. Goldberg, what are you seeking, Your Honor? We're asking that the divorce petition be dismissed with prejudice, that all marital assets be awarded to my client, and that the plaintiff be ordered to pay restitution for the money she stole. We're also referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Vanessa crying. Motion granted, the judge said. Mrs. Matthews, you are fortunate that your husband is seeking civil rather than criminal remedies, though I understand that may change. This court finds your conduct to be reprehensible and fraudulent. As we left the courtroom, Vanessa tried to approach me. Richard, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain, Vanessa. I heard everything I needed to hear in your own words. I made mistakes, but I did love you. No, you didn't. You've never loved anyone but yourself. You're a predator who destroys people for money. Harold Steinberg tried to damage control. Richard, perhaps we can work out some kind of settlement. Martin cut him off. Mr. Steinberg, I suggest you focus on your own legal problems. Conspiracy to commit fraud is a serious charge. The aftermath was swift and brutal for Vanessa. Within a week, the FBI had opened an investigation into her financial crimes. Money she had hidden in offshore accounts was frozen, and she was facing multiple federal charges. Her previous victims, the 2 men she had divorced before me, came forward with their own evidence of fraud. It turned out that Vanessa had lied about her age, her background, and her circumstances in both previous marriages. Harold Steinberg was disbarred for his role in the conspiracy, and several other attorneys who had helped Vanessa in previous cases were under investigation. But the most satisfying part was watching Vanessa's carefully constructed world collapse, without access to her hidden assets and facing massive legal bills. She had to move out of the Plaza Hotel and into a tiny studio apartment in Queens. Her designer wardrobe was seized as evidence, and she was forced to take a job as a retail clerk to pay for basic expenses. The media picked up the story, and Vanessa became a symbol of matrimonial fraud. Her picture was on the front page of the New York Post with the headline, "The Black Widow's Web." Her social circle of gold-digging friends abandoned her immediately, terrified that they would be caught up in the investigation. Several of them were indeed questioned by the FBI about their own marriages and financial arrangements. 6 months after the divorce proceedings, Vanessa was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, theft, and money laundering. She was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution of over $2 million to her various victims. As for me, I not only kept all of my assets, but actually came out ahead financially. The money Vanessa had tried to hide was returned to me, plus interest and penalties she had to pay. More importantly, I learned valuable lessons about trust, due diligence, and protecting myself. A year after the divorce, I met Catherine, a successful surgeon who was financially independent and had no interest in my money. She was intelligent, honest, and when I eventually told her about Vanessa, her response was perfect. "Thank God you found out who she really was before she could do more damage," she said. Some people are just broken inside, and no amount of money can fix that. Catherine and I took our relationship slowly, building trust and genuine partnership. When I eventually proposed to her 3 years later, we both signed a prenup not because we didn't trust each other, but because we both understood the importance of protecting what we had built independently. We're now happily married with twin boys, and Catherine has proven to be everything Vanessa pretended to be: loyal, loving, and committed to building a real life together rather than extracting wealth from a victim. The most satisfying moment came 2 years ago when I received a letter from Vanessa in prison. She was requesting money for her commissary account and claiming that she had learned her lesson and wanted to make amends. I threw the letter away without reading it completely. Today, as I watch Catherine help our boys with their homework, I sometimes think about how different my life would have been if I had never discovered Vanessa's true nature. I would have been trapped in a loveless marriage with a woman who viewed me as nothing more than a source of income. Instead, Vanessa's greed and overconfidence led to her complete downfall, while freeing me to find real love with someone who actually deserved it. The woman who thought she could play the perfect long con ended up serving time for her crimes, while I built the family and partnership she had prevented me from having. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting someone's own character destroy them while you build something better with someone who actually knows what love means. Vanessa is still in prison, as far as I know, probably planning her next con for when she gets out. As for me, I'm living proof that sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the greatest blessing. You just have to be smart enough to recognize both when they happen.